The doctor is in. A question I constantly get asked as a real estate professional in Southwest Washington is, what are some advantages and disadvantages of living in Southwest Washington versus Northwest Oregon? And this whole region is really the Portland greater metro area. And within Portland, Portland is within Multnomah County. And outside of Portland, there's Washington County, which the main city is Beaverton-Hillsboro, and Clackamas County, which is the east side of Portland and beyond. And then there's Clark County, which is to the north of Multnomah County and Portland. And there's about 1.5 million people, and if you include Clark County, probably a little closer to 2 million people in this larger Portland, Vancouver metro area. So there's all kinds of questions about what's better, what's worse, what are some advantages and disadvantages of living in the various counties. And I wanted to discuss that today, especially for those of you who are out of town and thinking about this move to our wonderful area. And more people are. In the 1970s, we had a big exodus or influx of people exodusing from California up here. And there was a couple winters and they were pretty bad and the snow piled up and they left. And since then, we've been an escape valve for California. One of the things that people should know that are moving from here from other places is some of the advantages and disadvantages. So that's what I'm going to cover today. Now, in Oregon, which would be especially Northern Oregon, the Portland metro area, again, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington counties, the main source of revenue in Oregon is income tax and property tax. There is no sales tax in Oregon, and there's been a couple times since the 70s where they've tried, but it inevitably fails every time. So property tax is one of the big ways that people raise revenue, or this Oregon raises revenue. It's capped at 5%. However, local municipalities may add on to that. And what we find in Multnomah is fairly higher than the rest of the state. That would be true of Washington County and Clackamas County as well. In Washington, we don't have sales tax. We don't have income tax. We do have sales tax, and that again is about the municipality that we live in. In Vancouver, it's up to about 9%, but no sales tax on food, sales tax everywhere else. We're a bit of tax cheats in Clark County. A lot of us cross the border into Oregon to do our shopping. If you buy a car in Oregon, you'll definitely pay that tax back to Washington. There's no escaping that. And the other way that we raise revenue in Washington is through property tax. Although property tax isn't as much, there's also a B&O tax in Washington where there isn't one in Oregon. And so the B&O taxes businesses. So we don't have to make up as much revenue as Oregon does with their property and their income tax. So in Washington, one of the 9 states in the union that does not have income tax, one of the big ones is Texas. I believe another one is Nevada. And so one of the advantages here is there is not that dual income tax you'll have to pay. You just have to pay the Fed. And our sales tax is relatively low, and especially in Clark County, you're going to find that the assessor bases that property tax on your assessed value, not the market value, which is always generally much lower than market value would be. So the tax question is kind of answered in the front of that. And the next question that generally get asked are, how are the schools comparably? And what I find is as you move out from Portland, into Clackamas, and especially Clackamas. Clackamas has a very high population in their schools. David Douglas High School has, I don't want to quote the exact number, but it's over 3,000 students. I don't know if it's 6,000, but you can imagine a high school that serves that many people is bound to have some crowding issues. Washington County, Beaverton schools aren't as crowded. And Multnomah, the primary school district in Multnomah County, is Portland Public. And what we find in Portland Public is a lot of schools that were built in the middle of the last century that haven't been refurbished or are in the midst of being refurbished. In Clark County, in Vancouver proper, there are two school districts, Vancouver Public School and Evergreen Public School. I had the pleasure of teaching at Vancouver Public School for a dozen years and can really get into the system here, but I'll just paint some broad strokes. What some of the pluses and minuses of Vancouver Public is they have a magnet program. So they have schools that are designated for certain things like the STEM school, the art school, and the rest of the population is served by what they call now comprehensive high schools. So there are 4 comprehensive high schools in Vancouver Public as well as Evergreen Public. Evergreen is moving to a little more of a model towards Vancouver. They've got 2 magnet schools now. But some of the issues with Evergreen Public is they haven't been as robustly funded as Vancouver Public. Vancouver Public has not lost a school levy in over 60 years. One of the things that Evergreen Public has cut in the last few years is their inclusiveness, their diversity in education programs have really taken a hit there. Both are very strong, forward-thinking school districts. Beyond that, we have the Camas Public Schools. Everybody that moves to Camas really is dedicated to education, and they end up paying a higher percentage of their property taxes to education, Camas being the most well-funded district in Clark County, Vancouver, Evergreen, and then Battleground Public Schools, which has 2 high schools. Camas has 1 high school and a special needs school as well, and a program, an alternative education program as well. Sorry, splitting in between these 2. I'll try to move towards covering them a little more comprehensively, each of them. Moving into the Battleground Public Schools, it's the least funded of the school districts in Clark County, and painting broad strokes, Battleground has suffered in passing their levies in the last 30 years. In fact, they haven't passed a levy, and their schools are very overcrowded, and their support systems within those schools have stretched significantly. Lots of people that I know, I coached soccer for 21 years, so I had a good idea of some of the ins and the outs of the school district. Battleground has a high population of apostolic Lutherans that don't tend to do a lot of extracurricular activities, such as athletics and others, but do tend to get a lot of their supports within the school district, but yet withdraw from any sort of activities outside of the normal school day. So while their population is quite large, the population that engages in extracurricular activities is quite small. If you're one of those people who is really looking for a sports experience, again, you're going to find that the Camas Public Schools, Camas High School, while competing in the 4A classification, which is the largest classification of high schools in Washington, has some of the most successful athletic programs. Both their boys and girls soccer has been highly successful. Boys and girls basketball, boys and girls cross country, all have had tremendous success in the last 20 years. Moving up into the northwest part of Clark County, we do have the Woodland Public Schools, small system. And in fact, most of Woodland is in Cowlitz County, the neighboring county to our north. So you can't mention Woodland without mentioning the fact that it is in another county as well. Just south of that, we have Ridgefield. Ridgefield borders along Battleground and Woodland, and just above Vancouver. Ridgefield has a great school system, although in the last couple levies, they haven't been able to pass their levies, and they're dealing with some overcrowding issues. But I would say their sports teams have had success, although they compete at the 2A level, which is 2 levels down from where Camas was, if you remember that part of the conversation just a few minutes ago. So that's kind of an overview of the schools. Our sort of the intangibles, parks, recreation, what have you. We noticed lately, especially with this newer generation coming up in their 20s and 30s, they really like to have that parks and rec experience that no other generations have had. And so we do see a lot of those individuals at that level, the 20s to 30s, are engaging in sports and other activities beyond just their teen years. And there's lots of opportunities for that in Clark County. However, the adult leagues in Portland are well known and well established. I mean, you could join a kickball team. There's some baseball that retired college players, retired professionals engage in at a fairly high level. There's a couple of soccer teams that could do some good competition. Much more so than, say, the Southwest Washington level. So if you're looking for that elite sports experience into your 20s and 30s, definitely the Portland side is going to have a little more for you to offer, for offering to you. Easy to be said. And so some of those extracurricular activities seem to shine a little brighter in Portland. Portland has an extensive park network. Forest Park is amazing, but here's someone who lives in Clark County and has their whole life extolling the virtues of Forest Park. So it's not like I've never been and don't go quite often, and it's very, very easy to get to, depending on the time of the day. One thing you'll want to know about is traffic. Traffic is a big deal. If I didn't say this before, 60 to 70,000 people from Vancouver, the greater Vancouver or Clark County or Southwest Washington area make the trek each day over the I-5 or 205 bridge to work in Portland. So it's quite extensive traffic that happens in the morning. So, 7 to 9 or 10. If you're trying to go to Portland, you're going to be in a line. Conversely, going into Portland from Vancouver, you really want to be concerned about what time you're getting back. And depending on the day, Monday or Friday, you probably want to head back around noon or 1. Traffic starts to pick up Monday and Friday. Monday's a little lighter, but Friday, of course, heading back into Vancouver, you want to be in the road at about 2, 3. There's an HOV lane in Oregon coming into Washington. There is no HOV lane going from Washington to Oregon. So while you can cruise through that HOV lane, those other 2 lanes, because there's 3 going each way, are going to be quite difficult to navigate. And if some minor fender bender or, God forbid, a larger accident occur, there's going to be some major gridlock, especially on I-5. I-5 is a little more antiquated. We have a drawbridge on I-5, the only drawbridge on the interstate in the United States of America. While it doesn't go up and down that often anymore, you can imagine if the bridge does go up during rush hour, you immediately have a 2 to 3 hour traffic jam. So if you're trying to get home from downtown Portland into Vancouver or other areas in Clark County on the west side, especially because I-5 serves the west side, 205 serves the east side, you're going to want to enjoy our myriad of radio stations, or hopefully your car has other media and on which to play. So traffic, thinking about traffic is another one that you really want to do. And if you're have those flexible hours, it's not that bad. We do have a mass transit system. We have the buses, C-Tran here in Clark County. I'm blanking on the name. TriMet, there we go. TriMet in the Portland side. And once you get into Oregon, right on the terminus of the light rail in Oregon is right across the bridge. So if you did want to take C-Tran, a lot of people do in the mornings, take C-Tran over. They get on the other side of the bridge at Delta Park and they park, or they get off the bus and they go on to light rail, which is a great way to travel in Portland. We are going through, in Portland, Vancouver area, a renewal of the I-5 bridge. We went through that about 15 years ago, and our local congresswoman, who just got voted out of office, was the major linchpin in denying that light rail over to Clark County. Lots of Clark County folks believe, without much data to support, that crime will increase if C-Tran extends the light rail from TriMet over to the I-5 corridor. However, there will be no federal money entering into the new I-5 bridge unless light rail is built. So there's quite the political stalemate here, and that's why a bridge has been so hard to build. And with the rising costs, you can imagine even $1 trillion probably isn't going to cover this bridge. So we're in the midst of building a new bridge, or the site planning to build that bridge. So we're looking at another, at least whenever they get that in the works, another 10 years before we get a new crossing. And the crossings, they're two, well, their bridge is two fold. One of the spans of the bridge was built in 1914 and the other in 1954. So not only do we have a drawbridge on the I-5 corridor, we have quite an old bridge on the I-5 corridor. So definitely in the next 10 to 20 years, we will see that, we hope for certain, get expanded and renewed and solve some of the traffic issues that occur when traveling between Vancouver and Portland. But again, about 60 to 70,000 people each day make that run and live to tell about it. And even with the income tax that you would be paying by living in Washington and working in Oregon, some of the benefits of the salary of higher wage jobs in Multnomah County offset some of those concerns. Some of our biggest employers in the region, you may have heard of Nike out in Beaverton. So certainly the biggest private employer in Oregon. We also have a major software company or hardware company, Intel, out in Beaverton. Of course, within the downtown corridor of Portland, large law firms, multinational affairs happening for certain. And in Vancouver, our largest employers are the school districts and the Southwest Washington Medical Center. We now have 2 hospitals to choose from in Vancouver. A third is definitely going to be constructed in the next 2 years. We have the Southwest Washington Medical Center. We also have Kaiser. Kaiser does not have a hospital. Best Kaiser over in Oregon also shut down, but there's the Sunnyside that serves for Kaiser patients over in Portland. In Vancouver, back over to our side of the river, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield that has a hospital out in Salmon Creek. And over in Portland, there are several hospitals to choose from. As you would imagine, in large metropolitan network, there are many providers over there. You may follow the Portland Trailblazers, the Moda Center. Moda is a healthcare company. So there's plenty of opportunities for business on both sides of the river. It just so happens there are more multinational corporations with some plants and some operations on the Portland side rather than the Vancouver side. So that should answer a lot of the questions just in general about, what are some pros and some cons about living in Northern Oregon, Southwest Washington. Of course, I'm a little partial, born and raised here in Vancouver, Washington, to Vancouver, but I did have the luxury or fortune to attend University of Portland and live in Portland for 5 years over in North Portland. So I have a fairly good idea of how to navigate each areas, but definitely my specialty is Southwest Washington and Vancouver area. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them on the comments, try to respond. This video is definitely a YouTube specific content for me, or you can always DM me or contact me through email. My website is www.sambusick.com. On there, you will find a place where you can schedule a meeting with me or find a valuation of your home. While this is fairly specific to Southwest Washington, I'm certainly happy if you're from the outside area of running this for you and giving you that information. If you are from out of town and you need a referral from a realtor, I have an extensive network of realtors throughout the nation. I work at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. You may have heard of us. We're one of the larger real estate companies in the United States of America, so we have extensive connections and networks through our affiliated offices through the great 50 states. I hope this information has been of use to you. Again, leave questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer them or contact me directly. Hope this helps. Peace.